Here we go. Dr. Umar Johnson has gotten a lot of flack over the years for talking about interracial marriage and relationships. It's resurfaced. Charlemagne did something on one of his shows talking about it as well. And there's always a bunch of kickback anytime anyone references any type of an interracial relationship because people always talk about you cannot help who you fall in love with. And so because you can't help who you fall in love with, that is the excuse to, sanction interracial marriage, etc., etc. Well, anybody who knows me already knows my perspective on that. I don't condone interracial relationships much more than just the act of love, but just for the sake of argument and to keep everything concise. What is love? What really is love? Now, see, you have to take different things into account when it comes to black people because you have to acknowledge the fact that our culture and our social dynamic is completely destroyed. So the only references that we go off of typically is from a European standpoint. Case in point, the word love, Love, comes from Germanic origins. So when you dissect the word love and you go to its origin, which you can go to at etymology.com, and it will break down all of those different words that you are questioning, and it tells you specifically that the word love just simply means that you have strong feelings for somebody. You have a romantic desire for somebody. You're passionate about somebody. Your libido is rising because that person is around you. You have sexual desires for this particular person. That is what love stands for. But see, that doesn't make sense to me simply because of the fact that I have children and I have a woman. Now, the woman, we do adult things. We have sex. We have romantic outings and different things. And I love her. Right? But then I also have children, boys and girls. And we don't do the same thing that my wife and I do. But I love them as well. So what are we getting at here? The word love has nothing to do with honor. It has nothing to do with respect. It has nothing to do with protecting. It has nothing to do with providing for. It has nothing to do with any of those things. It just simply means, I like you. I like you a lot. That's all it means. And to me, what's bad and what's worse for black folks is that we don't even know how to put those things into perspective, because when you look at things from a business aspect, all of your emotions should be taken completely out of the equation when it is time for you to invest your money, when it is time for you to build a business, when it is time for you to make financial decisions. Your emotions should be the last thing that you're relying on, because they have the ability to make you make a mistake, even if you've thoroughly researched the problem, even if you've thoroughly gone through your due diligence to make sure that this investment is going to pay out in the next, 2 to 5, 10 years. But when it comes to making a life decision with a person that's supposed to be till death do you part, we rely on the most simplistic and based emotion that we know of. We just cover it with a term called love. The purpose of culture is to establish traditions, to establish rituals, to establish a certain level of spirituality, to establish a certain level of actions to allow a group of people to go through life with the least amount of struggle as possible. When you look at our ancient ancestors, they spent thousands upon 10,000s of years developing a culture that will maximize our lifetime or the time that we spend in this life on this earth. Unfortunately, that was taken away. But instead of trying to get back to that, trying to get a better understanding of that, we, black folks, have wholeheartedly adopted a system that obviously is not working. It doesn't even begin to compare to make sense if you put it against anything. Black people's mental health, black people's drug addiction, black people's suicide rate, black people's domestic violence, black people's out of marriage child bearing demographic, the divorce rate, the marriage rate, period. All of that. The financial situation. There was an article in the newspaper, I believe it was the New York Times, don't misquote me, just Google it, it'll come up. But it said that you'll do better if you're black and you marry a white person financially. The reference that they used was who? Your vice president and the woman who was just elected to the Supreme Court. This is what we have, but we try to wrap that into love. Do you think that those women married those people because of love? Heck no. Who and who understands love? Is that a justifiable reason to get married? When you look at the marriage rate was a lot higher back in the day than it is today. Everybody wants to be married. But it takes more than love to stay married. Ask any couple who has been married for longer than 20 years if love was the only thing that kept them married. Love has nothing to do with it. Matter of fact, the average person doesn't even understand love. Why? Because the average person doesn't even understand who they are themselves. So how can you begin to understand the passions that you have for another person if you don't even understand the passion that you need to have for yourself? First of all, in the animal kingdom, a gorilla is going to be with another gorilla just simply because of the fact that the gorilla understands that he wants his species to survive, right? Now, there are plenty of the primates out there in the jungle. But the gorilla only wants to be with another gorilla. That's it. You're not over there messing with the orangutans. So, in some of this stuff, we have to use logic. In some of these things, we have to understand that propaganda is afoot. And it's foolishness. Now, don't get me wrong. In my life, especially in my younger days, I've fallen for a lot of the propaganda. And I've had to restructure my life drastically to compensate for that. I believed a lot of the crap. But here's the problem. When you don't pay attention to your ancestors, and when you don't, or you forget to listen to who you are first, when you forget that, then it's easy for you to fall victim to these schemes. It's easy for you to fall victim to a person who can get up and speak very eloquently, passionately. That's simple. That's easy for it to happen. But if you pay attention to what grandma said, in many respects, because sometimes grandma's education wasn't the greatest, but her logic was always on point. If you pay attention and read the books of what the elders wrote, listen to the speeches of how the elders spoke about certain aspects of the world that we live in today, then a lot of this stuff will become abundantly clear. And there'll be no errors like that you have to compensate for. when I get on here and I talk, I'm not a TikToker. I'm not a Instagrammer or a Facebooker to the extent that I'm trying to trend or I'm trying to create something that is going to be, so popular. I'm going to get 10 million views or some junk like that. It's not about that. It's about reaching the people that want to learn and want to understand. I realize that the large majority of people could care less. But there are a few people, like I once was, who wanted to understand, who wanted to put two and two together, but didn't know how to do math. So as I transition into the next phase of my life, it is incumbent upon me to impart my information that I have acquired to the next generation. Now, of course, I do that with my children. But black folks have never been limited to just their children. So hear what I say. Listen to the words that I speak. Everything that I tell you, you will always be able to go back and verify it. You will always go back to look it up and see why I say the things that I say. If black people are the most influential people on the planet. Every man on the planet acts like a black man at some point in time. And every woman on the planet acts like a black woman at some point in time. It's trendy, it's popular. We are a popular people. That's what we are, but we control very little. And the way that the power structure is on this planet is that we don't have very much of it. So how can you be the most influential but be the most powerless? That does not make sense. And if black people intend on continuing in this race, then we better equip ourselves better to control the things that we produce. And the number one thing that black people produce is other black people. As long as we're producing more black people, then we stay in the fight. I'm always going to tell you to know thyself. Know who you are first. Remember your ancestors. And that way, you will build your community. It just falls in place logically. But we have to get an understanding first. Kush.